Russia has accused the United States of transplanting incomplete biological weapons research projects from Ukraine to Africa. The accusations have broad ramifications and point to projects that are presently being carried out in Cameroon, Uganda, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These assertions have mostly been made by Igor Kirillov, the commander of Russia's forces for chemical, biological, and radiological defense. He claims that the declared goals of these programs are a smokescreen, a front for hidden agendas. According to Kirillov, the Russian Defense Ministry has records attesting to the U.S. military department's assignment to keep an eye on the biological situation in parts of Afghanistan and Iraq that border Saudi Arabia, Turkey, China, and Pakistan. He also accused the Pentagon of operating under the guise of the U.S. State Department just to avoid direct allegations. Kirillov argues that the U.S. is still very interested in researching Ukrainian territory and still controls several biological research institutions in the country despite the current conflict. He contends that these facilities are inactive, not deactivated, and are waiting for the battle to end before they can start up again. According to Kirillov, the U.S. has established scientific initiatives in Ukraine that are preparing Ukrainian experts for a possible provocation against Russia. He alleges that the West's involvement in the training indicates a calculated plan to disseminate misinformation through media channels. Bear in mind that this is not the first time that Russia is accusing the USA. There have been so many accusations, but the most recent was in May, when Russia accused the United States of being behind what it says was a drone attack on Moscow's Kremlin citadel intended to kill President Vladimir Putin. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby told MSNBC television the Russian claims were false and that Washington does not encourage or enable Ukraine to strike outside its borders. Russia has stated that it believes the U.S. is directly involved in the conflict and is out to strategically defeat Moscow. Despite over 20 months of conflict, the United States maintains that it is equipping Ukraine to defend itself and reclaim territory that Moscow has unlawfully taken. All this is happening at a point in time where Russia is trying to kick the US and the West out of Africa. Russia has signed military cooperation agreements with several African countries, including Algeria, Angola, Egypt, and Ethiopia. These agreements have included the sale of weapons and military equipment, as well as the provision of military training. For example, in 2018, Russia signed a $25 billion arms deal with Egypt, one of the largest arms deals in recent history. In 2019, Russia deployed troops to the Central African Republic to help the government fight against rebel groups. And in 2020, Russia signed a $1 billion military cooperation agreement with Algeria. Russia has also been increasing its trade and investment with Africa. The Russia-Africa trade reached $25 billion in 2021, up from $19 billion in 2020. Russia is also a major investor in Africa, with projects in sectors such as mining, energy, and infrastructure. There is, of course, disagreement over whether Russia's growing interest in Africa is driven by a desire to compete with the West and the United States. Some analysts think that Russia is merely attempting to deepen its diplomatic and economic connections with the continent. Nonetheless, some Western officials have expressed concern over the actions that Russia has taken in recent years. For example, in 2021, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, warned that Russia was seeking to undermine democracy and human rights in Africa. Blinken also said that Russia was using its military and security ties to gain access to natural resources and markets. The U.S. and the West are not the only ones concerned about Russia's growing influence in Africa. Some African leaders have also expressed concerns. For example, in 2022, the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, said that Africa should be careful about Russia's growing influence on the continent. Akufo-Addo also said that Africa should not become a pawn in the great power rivalry between Russia and the West. You can now see how Russia is trying to prove a point to the US and the West. Some commentators have even argued that the Russia-Ukraine war is actually a war between the United States and Russia. They point to the fact that the United States has been the leading supplier of military aid to Ukraine, and that has been playing a key role in coordinating the international response to the invasion. They also argue that the United States is ultimately responsible for the conflict, as it has been pushing NATO eastward toward Russia's borders for decades. Other commentators have debunked these arguments, but whether or not the Russia-Ukraine war is actually a war between the United States and Russia, it is clear that the conflict has had a significant impact on both countries. The war has also had a significant impact on the global economy and has raised concerns about the risk of a wider conflict. Russia seems to be the favorite of African countries that have undergone coups in West Africa. These countries include Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Sudan. In 2022, Burkina Faso experienced 2 military coups in quick succession. The first coup ousted President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who was seen as being close to the West. The second coup ousted the leader of the transitional government, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who was also seen as being close to the West. The current leader of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is seen as being more aligned with Russia. In 2022, Russia announced that it would be providing military equipment to Burkina Faso, and the two countries have signed several agreements on military cooperation. Sudan also experienced a military coup in 2021 that ousted Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. The coup leaders were seen as being close to Russia, and the new government quickly established close ties with Moscow. There are several reasons why some African countries that have undergone coups in recent years have aligned themselves with Russia. One reason is that Russia is seen as being more willing to provide military and financial assistance to these countries than the West. Another reason is that Russia is seen as being less judgmental of these countries' human rights records. Some African leaders may see Russia as a counterweight to the influence of the West on the continent. With all this going on, it is possible that World War III also could be looming. If a conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan were to escalate, it could drag into other countries and lead to a wider war. Or if a climate change event were to cause a severe food shortage in a major country, it could lead to social unrest and instability, which could in turn lead to a conflict that could spread to other countries. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine could escalate into a wider war if Russia were to invade another NATO country, or if NATO were to intervene directly in the conflict. The conflict in Yemen could escalate into a wider war if Saudi Arabia and Iran were to become directly involved in the conflict. Also, the ongoing conflict in Syria could escalate into a wider war if the United States, Russia, and Turkey were to become more directly involved in the conflict. No one is hoping for a war, but things need to be put in place to ensure that everything works smoothly. Do you think there is going to be a third world war soon? Is the U.S. also moving biological weapon projects to Africa? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Encourage us to keep making videos like this for you by liking this video and subscribing to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too, so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.